Gonna dress up like a girl, and you can't make me. You can't make me. You can't make me.
You look positively ravishing.
But what are we going to call him? I mean, who ever heard of a goddess named Gilligan?
Why don't you call her Gilliana?
Today, we're diving into the crazy, funny, and totally weird world of Gilligan's Island. That classic show from 1964 that's been making us laugh for decades. You probably think you know all about those 7 castaways stuck on a tiny island. But trust me, there are some seriously strange facts you've never heard before. From behind-the-scenes secrets to bizarre little details, this list has it all. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just curious about this iconic show, you're in for a treat. Grab your coconut drink and get ready to learn some wild stuff about the show that'll blow your mind. Let's get into it. 20. The pilot had different cast members. Okay, here's something that'll blow your mind if you're a Gilligan's Island fan. Did you know the original pilot of the show had totally different actors for 2 of the iconic characters? Yep, before the castaways we all know and love were stranded. The roles of the Professor and Ginger were played by completely different people. And get this, Ginger wasn't even the glamorous Hollywood movie star we remember. Nope. In the unaired pilot, she was actually written as, wait for it, a secretary. That's right. She was more like a quiet background character with a very different vibe. So why the change? Well, test audiences didn't exactly love the dynamic, and the network wanted a more appealing cast. So they brought in Louise to add some Hollywood sparkle as the new Ginger, and recast the Professor to give him more presence and intellect. Honestly, it's wild how a couple of casting decisions totally reshaped the chemistry of the show and helped turn Gilligan's Island into the cult classic it became. Can you imagine the show without the sultry movie star Ginger or the brainy professor we all grew up watching? It was almost called Gilligans Travels. Before the show became the iconic sitcom we know today, it almost had a very different name, Gilligans Travels. That title was seriously considered in the early stages of development. The idea was a light-hearted twist on Gulliver's Travels, Jonathan Swift's classic tale of adventure and strange lands. It made sense in theory. After all, Gilligan and the gang were stranded far from home, experiencing their own series of bizarre misadventures. But the more the creators thought about it, the less the title fit. Gilligan's Travels sounded a little too literary, maybe even a bit misleading. It gave off the impression of a journey across many lands, while the show was really about being stuck in one place, with all the humor coming from trying and failing to get off the island. The charm of the show wasn't about globe-trotting adventures. It was about the oddball group of castaways making the best of a hopeless situation, episode after episode. They went with Gilligan's Island, a simple, catchy name that instantly told you what the show was all about. And honestly, it just worked. It's hard to imagine that theme song kicking off with any other title. Gilligan's first name is Willie. All right, here's something that might mess with your head a little if you're a fan of Gilligan's Island. Turns out, Gilligan's first name isn't just, well, Gilligan. According to the show's creator, Schwarz, his full name is actually Willie Gilligan. Yeah, Willie. Now if you're thinking, wait, I've never heard anyone call him that, you're not alone. The name Willie is never actually used on the show. Not once. Every character just calls him Gilligan, like it's his first name. Which kind of makes sense, because he feels like a Gilligan, right? Try calling him Willie, and suddenly he sounds like your neighbor who grills a lot and owns 3 Hawaiian shirts, not a clumsy first mate who can't catch a break. But Schwarz himself confirmed it. In interviews, he said that Gilligan's full name was always supposed to be Willie Gilligan. He just figured it never needed to be said on the show. And honestly, he's kind of right. Would it have added anything to the story? Not really. Still, it's one of those weird little trivia facts that kind of changes how you see the character, like realizing the professor had a name too. It's Roy, by the way, Roy Hinckley. Next time someone tries to flex with their deep-cut TV knowledge, just drop this one. Did you know Gilligan's first name is actually Willie? You'll either blow their mind or start a debate you didn't ask for. Either way, you win. 17. The theme song was revised due to fans. Have you ever watched the early episodes of Gilligan's Island and noticed something missing? Like, in the theme song, they name-drop the millionaire and his wife. But then it just ends with, "And the rest?" Yeah, the rest? That was originally how the professor and Maryanne got credited, just lumped in there like extras. It didn't sit well with fans at all. People started writing in, asking why those two characters didn't get mentioned by name. I mean, they were in every episode. They had storylines. They weren't just background characters, so fans pushed back, and to the show's credit, they listened. By season 2, the theme song was updated to include them properly, the professor and Maryanne, and just like that, they were no longer the rest. Funny how something as small as a few words in a jingle can make that much of a difference. What's wild is how iconic that theme song became after the change. Most people only remember the revised version, but that early slight? It stuck with some fans. Onto a fact about the artificial lagoon. The lagoon was a studio backlot. Wait. What? You probably picture that tropical paradise, the palm trees, the crashing waves, the little huts made out of bamboo. It all feels like some remote island in the middle of nowhere, right? Plot twist. That famous lagoon? It wasn't in Hawaii, or the Caribbean, or even near a real beach. It was built on a studio backlot in Studio City, California, right in the middle of Los Angeles. Yeah, the entire island was basically a giant set at CBS Studio Center. They brought in tons of truckloads of sand, built fake palm trees, dug out an actual man-made lagoon, and surrounded it with enough greenery to make it feel real on camera. And it worked. I mean, unless you really know what to look for, it totally sells the illusion. What's even more impressive is that they had to deal with all the limitations of filming on a backlot. The lagoon would get freezing cold in the winter, because it's not like it was heated or anything. And whenever it rained in LA, which isn't often, but it happens, the whole set would turn into a muddy mess. Eventually, after the show ended, the lagoon just sat there for a while. Other productions used it now and then, but years later, CBS finally drained it and paved it over. So yeah, the Gilligan's Island Lagoon is now a parking lot. There's something kind of weirdly poetic about that. One of the most iconic fake islands in TV history, now just a bunch of parking spaces in the valley. Real island wildlife was used. One of the fun things about Gilligan's Island was that it always had that wild, anything-can-happen energy. You had shipwrecked castaways, makeshift inventions, and yes, tropical animals just roaming around. But here's the thing, those animals, they were real, like actually real. The production used live wildlife on set to make the island feel more authentic. So if you ever spotted a bird flying across the screen or a monkey randomly popping into a scene, that wasn't CGI or clever editing. That was an actual animal doing its thing, often not according to the script. And yeah, it caused chaos. There were monkeys that wouldn't stay put, birds that wouldn't stop squawking during takes, and the crew just had to roll with it. Imagine trying to film a serious scene, and suddenly A toucan lands on the professor's shoulder like it's trying to steal the spotlight. Animal wranglers were on set, but this was the 60s, so let's just say things were a little looser back then. There are stories of takes getting completely ruined because a monkey decided to bolt across the lagoon or start tugging on cables. And of course, Gilligan, being the lovable disaster magnet that he was, always seemed to be the one getting chased or jumped on. Sure, it made filming harder, but it also gave the show some real personality. That anything can go wrong vibe? The animals helped make that happen. Ginger versus Maryanne was a real rivalry. Most fans loved to debate who was the true favorite on the island. Ginger, the glamorous movie star, or Maryanne, the sweet girl next door. But what you might not know is that this rivalry wasn't just on screen. Tina Louise, who played Ginger, reportedly clashed with some of the cast members during filming. And her relationship with Dawn Wells, who played Maryanne, was said to be pretty tense. They didn't exactly hit it off, which added a bit of real-life drama to the show. It's interesting because while the characters were supposed to be stranded friends, behind the scenes, things were a bit more complicated. It just goes to show that even the happiest TV families have their off-camera moments. Yup, even Ginger had a little secret. Chapter 13. Tina Louise hated the show. Tina Louise, the actress who played Ginger Grant, had a complicated relationship with the show. While it became a massive hit and developed a devoted fan base, Tina wasn't thrilled about it at all. In fact, she openly expressed how much she disliked the show and how she felt it negatively impacted her acting career. She had hoped for more serious and varied roles, but playing the glamorous movie star on a stranded island typecast her in a way that stuck hard. Instead of opening doors, the roles seemed to close a lot of them. Over time, Tina grew increasingly frustrated with the show's campy style and the limited range of her character. To her, Gilligan's Island felt more like a cheesy sitcom that boxed her in rather than a stepping stone to bigger things. That resentment ran deep enough that she chose not to participate in several reunion specials and follow-up projects, even though many of her co-stars were eager to revisit those roles. For Tina, the show was less about fun or nostalgia and more about a missed opportunity to be seen as a serious actress. Bob Denver Gilligan advocated for co-stars. Here's the story. When it came time to record the show's theme song, Bob found out that the professor and Maryanne weren't included in the lyrics. He thought that wasn't fair, because those characters were a huge part of the show and loved by fans. Bob Denver wasn't just the lovable, bumbling Gilligan on the show, he was also a pretty stand-up guy behind the scenes. Fans might know him best for all those goofy moments on the show, but what's less talked about is how much he looked out for his fellow cast members. Bob was one of those rare actors who really cared about the people he worked with, and he didn't hesitate to speak up when he felt they deserved better. From what people say, Bob was super supportive of the whole cast. He knew Gilligan's Island was a team effort, and even though his character often stole the spotlight, he made sure the rest of the gang got their fair share of the love, and sometimes the paycheck too. Rumor has it, he pushed producers to give better roles or more screen time to some of his co-stars, making sure no one felt left out or underappreciated. It's kind of refreshing, right? In a business that can sometimes be all about ego and competition, Bob was more about camaraderie. He got that the show wouldn't have been the same without the professor's smarts, the skipper's leadership, or Ginger's star power. And he wanted the behind-the-scenes stuff to be fair too. Plus, Bob's kindness went beyond just the cast. He was known to be a genuinely nice dude to the crew and everyone else involved in the show. That kind of attitude made Gilligan's Island feel like a fun, family-like place to work. which probably helped keep the good vibes going, even when the show was dealing with its usual crazy island mishaps. The cast was paid peanuts. Despite the show's huge popularity and continued success in reruns and syndication, the actors didn't receive residual payments. That means every time the show aired again, whether on local channels or in syndication, they didn't earn a dime from those reruns. At the time, this was pretty common, especially for shows produced in the 60s, but it still meant that the cast missed out on a lot of potential income. While the show went on to become a beloved classic and generated significant profits for the producers, the actors themselves didn't benefit financially beyond their original salaries. It's especially tough to think about because reruns of Gilligan's Island have been airing continuously for decades, making it a staple of pop culture. So even though the cast became famous, they didn't get the kind of financial rewards you might expect from such a lasting hit. This lack of residuals was a big reason why some of the actors struggled financially later on, despite the show's ongoing popularity. So Alan Hale Jr. broke his arm and kept filming. One of the lesser-known stories from Gilligan's Island is about Alan Hale Jr., the actor who played the skipper. During the show's production, Alan actually broke his arm. You'd think that would bring everything to a halt or at least slow things down, right? But not with him. Instead of telling anyone or asking for time off, he kept it under wraps and continued filming as if nothing happened. He didn't want to cause any delays or disruptions, especially since TV schedules and budgets can be tight. So, Hale toughed it out, working through the pain and adapting to the injury on set. The crew had to get creative with camera angles and props to hide the cast, but Alan's commitment made sure the show stayed on track. It's pretty impressive when you think about it. Filming a TV show with a broken arm isn't easy, but he made it work without missing a beat. The Minnows' name was a political joke. The name of the Minnow, the boat the cast was stranded on in Gilligan's Island, wasn't chosen randomly. It was actually a political joke aimed at Newton Minnow, who was the chairman of the FCC at the time. Minnow famously called television a vast wasteland in a speech criticizing the quality of TV programming. The show's creators decided to name the boat the SS Minnow as a playful jab at him. A minnow is a tiny fish, and the name was meant to be a lighthearted poke at Minnow's criticism, suggesting the show was small but fun, despite the negative label. What started as a subtle joke ended up becoming one of the most recognizable elements of the show, linking Gilligan's Island forever to a key moment in TV history. The coconut radio was based on real science. Some of the professor's inventions on Gilligan's Island, like the coconut radio, might seem pretty far-fetched at first glance, but they actually had some basis in real science. While the show played things for laughs and entertainment, the idea of using natural materials like coconuts as part of a makeshift radio wasn't completely made up. In reality, radios work by picking up electromagnetic signals and converting them into sound, and early radio experiments sometimes involved using simple, everyday materials. The coconut radio is a fun exaggeration, but it's rooted in the general idea that you can create circuits or antennas from natural objects, especially in a survival situation. The professor's inventions on the show often took basic scientific principles and stretched them creatively to fit the story. This blend of real science with imagination helped make his character more believable and added a clever touch to the show, even if the gadgets themselves wouldn't actually work as shown. While the coconut radio probably wouldn't pick up your favorite station in real life, it's a neat nod to how science can inspire creative problem-solving even on a deserted island. A typo almost changed everything. Before it even made it to television screens, there was almost a funny but potentially confusing mix-up. In an early TV guide listing, the show's name was nearly printed as Gilligans Island instead of the correct Gilligan's Island. It was just a simple typo, but it could have caused some real confusion for viewers. If that misprint had gone unnoticed, the show might have been remembered by the wrong name, and it could have affected how people searched for it or talked about it. Imagine trying to find Gilligan's Island when the actual show was Gilligan's Island. It would have made things tricky, especially back when people relied on printed guides to plan their TV watching. Fortunately, the mistake was caught before it became widespread, and the show kept its original name. The pilot was lost for years. The original pilot episode of Gilligan's Island has an interesting story behind it. It was filmed back in 1963, but wasn't actually aired on television until 1992, almost 30 years later. The reason for this long delay comes down to a mix of network decisions and how TV shows were handled at the time. After the pilot was made, the network wasn't completely sure about the show's direction, so they decided to rework some parts before the series officially started. Because of that, the pilot ended up sitting on the shelf and was never broadcast during the original run of the show. For years, it was considered a lost episode that fans had never seen. It wasn't until the early 90s, when nostalgia for classic TV was growing, that the pilot finally aired, giving fans a chance to see how the show originally began. Watching it reveals some differences in cast and character development compared to the series everyone knows, which makes it a fascinating glimpse into the show's early stages. This long gap between filming and airing highlights how TV production and programming worked back then. Pilots could be shelved indefinitely, and fans wouldn't see them until years later, if at all. Bob Denver was a marijuana advocate. Bob Denver, best known for playing Gilligan on Gilligan's Island, had an interesting life beyond his TV character. In the 70s, Denver was arrested for marijuana possession, an event that put him in the spotlight for reasons outside of acting. Rather than shy away from the issue, he became an advocate for the decriminalization of marijuana. At a time when attitudes toward cannabis were much stricter and laws harsher, Denver's arrest was significant. It gave him a personal perspective on the consequences of marijuana laws and inspired him to speak out in favor of reform. He believed that marijuana possession shouldn't be treated as a serious criminal offense and worked to raise awareness about the issue. Denver's advocacy wasn't just about his own experience. He supported broader efforts to change substance policies and reduce the penalties associated with marijuana use. His involvement showed a different side of the actor, someone willing to challenge social norms and push for change during a period when such views were less common in mainstream culture. This chapter of Bob Denver's life adds depth to his public image, showing he was more than just a TV star. The island was threatened by a forest fire. In 1965, during the production of Gilligan's Island, the outdoor lagoon set faced a serious threat from a nearby brush fire. The set, built on a studio backlot in California, included carefully constructed tropical foliage, huts, and water features designed to create the illusion of a deserted island. Because it was all outdoors and made mostly from flammable materials like wood and plants, the set was highly vulnerable. The brush fire started in the dry conditions typical of Southern California and quickly spread toward the studio lot where the lagoon set was located. If the fire had reached the set, it could have completely destroyed the carefully built scenery, forcing the production to either rebuild at great expense or halt filming altogether. For the cast and crew, this was a stressful situation because the show was in the middle of its run, and any interruption could have caused major delays. Fortunately, firefighters responded quickly and were able to contain the blaze before it reached the set. The damage was minimal, and filming was able to continue without significant disruption. However, the incident served as a wake-up call about the risks of filming outdoor shows in areas prone to wildfires. This near disaster is a lesser-known but fascinating piece of Gilligan's Island history. There were multiple reunion movies. You probably know it didn't just stop after the original show ended. Nope. The cast kept coming back for more in a couple of fun reunion movies that gave fans a chance to revisit their favorite stranded crew. Two of the most memorable ones are Rescue from Gilligan's Island from 1978 and The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island from 1981. First off, Rescue from Gilligan's Island was kind of a big deal because it actually tried to wrap up the story that the original show never got to finish. For years, fans joked about whether the castaways would ever get off that island, and this movie finally gave an answer. Of course, being a 70s TV movie, it had that classic cheesy vibe. Lots of goofy moments mixed with a little drama, and, of course, that iconic slapstick humor the show was known for. Watching the same gang, now a bit older, trying to adjust to normal life after years on an island was both funny and kinda sweet. Then there's the Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, which is just pure wacky fun. It's exactly what it sounds like. The famous basketball showmen somehow end up on the island with the castaways. This movie didn't try to be serious at all. It was just a crazy crossover full of jokes, silly basketball tricks, and those classic over-the-top moments that make you go, "Wait, what?" It's a perfect example of how the show didn't take itself too seriously, even in the reunion movies. What's great about these reunion films is that they kept the spirit of Gilligan's Island alive and gave longtime fans a chance to see the characters again. They were like comfort food for TV lovers, familiar, fun, and a little bit nostalgic. Sure, they're not cinematic masterpieces, but that's not the point. They're about laughter, goofy adventures, and the charm of a group of misfits trying to survive together, no matter what. If you're ever in the mood for some lighthearted, retro TV fun, checking out these reunion movies is definitely worth it. Whether it's the heartfelt Rescue from Gilligan's Island or the wild antics of the Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, they both remind us why this goofy little show has stuck around in our hearts for decades. 2. The show was canceled for Gunsmoke. So here's a wild bit of TV history. Even though Gilligan's Island had pretty decent ratings and a solid fan base, it still got canceled. Why? Because CBS wanted to keep Gunsmoke on the air. Yup, that's right. The classic Western Gunsmoke basically stole Gilligan's Island's spotlight and got it kicked off the schedule. Back in the 60s, networks were ruthless with their lineups, and even shows that did okay weren't always safe. Gilligan's Island was popular. People loved the goofy castaways stuck on that tiny island, but CBS faced a tough choice. They had Gunsmoke, a massive hit and one of the longest-running westerns ever, and they decided it was more important to keep that show going strong. Despite Gilligan's Island pulling in decent ratings, CBS gave it the axe after just 3 seasons. Fans were bummed, but the network was thinking big picture, and Gunsmoke had a huge loyal audience they didn't want to lose. It's kind of crazy when you think about it now. Gilligan's Island went on to become this iconic piece of pop culture, with reruns and reunion movies that kept the castaways alive in everyone's hearts. Meanwhile, Gunsmoke kept rolling for years, becoming a legendary Western staple. In the end, the cancellation wasn't really about how well Gilligan's Island was doing. It was about TV politics, scheduling battles, and networks hedging their bets on shows they thought would last longer. But hey, even with that early cancellation, Gilligan's Island managed to leave a way bigger legacy than most shows get in way more seasons. Next time you watch an episode of Gilligan's Island, just remember, It almost didn't happen past 3 seasons, all because CBS couldn't let go of Gunsmoke. A NASA astronaut said it inspired him. For our last weird and cool little fact, NASA astronaut Scott Kelly once said that watching Gilligan's Island as a kid actually inspired him to dream about exploring remote places like way beyond the island, out in space. Yep, that goofy show about castaways stuck on a tiny island got an astronaut thinking big. When you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Gilligan's Island was all about being stuck in a faraway, mysterious place with just a handful of people, figuring things out and trying to survive. For a kid watching that, it's easy to imagine what it would be like to explore unknown worlds, even if it's just a tropical island at first. Scott Kelly, who spent a whole year living on the International Space Station, talked about how those early episodes fueled his imagination and made him want to be part of something bigger, to go where no one had gone before. Just like the castaways had to face the unknown on their island. It's kind of amazing to think a lighthearted sitcom could plant the seed for someone who ended up literally exploring space. It just goes to show how powerful TV can be. Even a silly show like Gilligan's Island can inspire dreams and adventures far beyond what anyone imagined. So next time you're watching the professor try to fix the radio or Gilligan accidentally mess things up, remember, somewhere out there, it might be sparking someone's next big idea. If you enjoyed these behind-the-scenes stories about Gilligan's Island, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more fun content.